At 2:15 inches the morning, while Miami slept beneath sheets of silver rain, Sienna Vale woke up on the concrete floor of an unfinished skyscraper with her wrists tied behind her back. Above her, 47 floors of steel skeleton rose into the storm. Below her, the foundation groaned, and directly in front of her, beneath a floodlight, her name was carved into the oldest stone buried at the heart of the tower, Sienna Vale. She stared at it through rain and bloodless fear, unable to breathe. She had never seen that stone before. She had never approved that inscription, and she had no idea why the most expensive luxury skyscraper in Miami had been built on top of her name. A man in a wet gray suit crouched in front of her and smiled. "You should have kept your mouth shut, engineer." Sienna lifted her chin, even though her body trembled. "You're going to kill people if this building opens. That's not your problem anymore." Thunder cracked over Biscayne Bay. Then headlights flooded the construction site. One black SUV rolled through the gate, then another, then 10 more. The men around Sienna stopped smiling. A silence fell so heavy, even the rain seemed afraid to touch it. A tall man stepped out of the first SUV wearing a black coat, no umbrella, no hurry. The storm soaked his dark hair and ran down the sharp planes of his face, but he moved like the city belonged to him. The kidnappers lowered their voices. "Moretti," one of them whispered. Adrian Moretti, supreme mafia boss of the East Coast, walked across the flooded construction ground as if he had come not to negotiate, but to pass judgment. His eyes landed on Sienna first, cold, controlled, unreadable. Then his gaze dropped to the foundation stone, her name. For the first time, something in his expression cracked. Not softness. Something worse. Recognition. Adrian turned slowly toward the half-built skyscraper towering above them. Then he said quietly, "Bring it down." The entire site froze. Victor Calder, the billionaire developer standing beside the cranes, rushed forward. "You can't be serious. That tower is worth $800 million. Adrian didn't look at him. She was tied to the floor above her own name. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "That tower is already dead. By sunrise, every news helicopter in Miami was circling above the impossible scene, the glittering skeleton of Calder Crown Tower collapsing in a controlled demolition, while Adrian Moretti stood in the rain with Sienna Vale wrapped in his black coat beside him. And Sienna, still shaking, realized something terrifying. The Mafia Boss had not destroyed the tower because of corruption. He had destroyed it because of her. 3 weeks earlier, Sienna's life had been ordinary, in the way only lonely lives can be. She woke before dawn, in a small Coral Gables apartment, filled with geological maps, soil samples, coffee mugs, and unpaid student loan statements. She owned too many field boots, trusted data more than people, and believed every building told the truth if you listened closely enough to the ground beneath it. At 28, she had built a reputation as one of Miami's sharpest geological engineers. She was not famous, not rich, not glamorous. She was the woman developers hired when they wanted certainty before pouring billions into the earth. Calder Crown Tower was supposed to be her biggest project. A waterfront luxury skyscraper, private residences, sky gardens, a rooftop helipad, a hotel designed for billionaires who wanted to sleep above the ocean and look down on everyone else. Sienna had been hired to supervise the foundation reinforcement after early soil reports showed dangerous instability beneath the site. Miami's limestone was beautiful and treacherous. One wrong calculation, one cheap shortcut, one corrupt decision, and an entire building could become a monument to greed. On her first week, she found the first lie. The concrete mixture didn't match the certified specifications. On her second week, she found the second. The steel reinforcement depth had been reduced. By the third week, she found the truth. Someone had secretly replaced millions of dollars in structural material with cheaper imports, hidden the paperwork, and bribed inspectors to sign off. The tower was not just unsafe. It was a future mass grave dressed in glass. Sienna reported it to her direct supervisor, Martin Ellery, a nervous man with tired eyes and expensive watches. He closed his office door and whispered, "Destroy the report." Sienna stared at him. "Excuse me? You don't understand who owns this project. Victor Calder owns this project." Martin laughed once, bitterly. "Victor Calder is the face, not the power." Sienna picked up her report. "Then whoever the power is can read my findings." His face went pale. "Sienna, please. I'm trying to save you." But she had been raised by a mother who cleaned houses for rich men and still refused to bow her head. Elena Vale had always told her, "Never let powerful people convince you that truth is rude." So Sienna backed up the files, photographed the compromised materials, and scheduled a meeting with the city safety board. That night, her apartment door was open when she came home. Nothing was stolen, nothing was broken. But on her kitchen table sat a single white envelope. Inside was a photo of her sleeping in her bedroom. On the back, written in black ink, "Stop digging." Sienna should have run. Instead, she went to the site the next morning. That was when she first saw Adrian Moretti. He stood across the street beneath the shadow of a black SUV, watching the tower rise. No entourage near him, no visible weapon, no expression. Just a man in a charcoal suit, still as a statue, while construction workers avoided looking in his direction. Sienna noticed him because everyone else pretended not to. Their eyes met across 6 lanes of traffic. For a moment, the noise of Miami dimmed. He looked at her, like he already knew her, not recognized, knew. Sienna's pulse changed. Then a cement truck rolled between them, and when it passed, he was gone. That afternoon, Victor Calder arrived at the site in a white Bentley with cameras behind him and a smile designed for magazines. He shook hands with city officials, praised the future of Miami luxury, and called Sienna "our brilliant young engineer" in front of reporters. Then, when no one was listening, he leaned close and said, "Ambition is attractive, Miss Vale. Martyrdom is not." Sienna smiled without warmth. "Good thing I'm not ambitious enough to die for your building." Victor's eyes hardened. "You have no idea what this building means." "No," she said, "but I know what it weighs." That evening, her car wouldn't start. Her phone lost signal, and 3 men dragged her into a van before she could scream. They took her to the tower, not to a warehouse, not to a dock, to the foundation. They wanted fear to finish what bribery could not. But fear did not silence Sienna. It sharpened her. Even tied to a chair under raw concrete beams, she told them exactly which structural columns would fail first. She told them the tower would settle unevenly within 5 years, crack within 7, and kill people before its 10th anniversary. One of the men slapped the clipboard out of her lap. "You really think anyone cares?" Sienna looked up at the unfinished floors, disappearing into darkness. "Buildings remember everything," she whispered. "So does the ground." Then Victor Calder arrived. He was no longer smiling. "You were warned. You're using bad materials. I am using what the market allows. You're risking lives. I'm protecting investments. That's what cowards call murder before it happens." Victor stepped close, fury flashing in his eyes. "Do you know why this tower is being built here?" Sienna said nothing. He grabbed her chin and forced her to look at the foundation stone beneath the floodlight. Her name was carved there. Sienna's stomach turned cold. "What is that?" Victor smiled. That is the reason you should have stayed invisible." Before she could ask what he meant, the gate exploded open with headlights. Adrian Moretti arrived like a verdict. No shouting, no chaos, no wasted motion. His men moved through the construction site with terrifying precision. The local mobsters who had looked so cruel 5 minutes earlier suddenly looked like children caught stealing from a king. Adrian stopped in front of Sienna. Up close, he was even more dangerous. Dark eyes, controlled face, a scar near his jaw, a stillness that made violence feel unnecessary because everyone already imagined it. He crouched, slowly. Sienna forced herself not to shrink back. His gaze moved over the rope around her wrists, the bruise forming near her cheek, the mud on her boots. Then he looked at her eyes. "Did they touch you anywhere else?" His voice was low, quiet. The question should have frightened her. Instead, the restraint in it did. "No," she said. Something deadly eased only halfway from his face. He reached behind her and cut the rope himself. The blade never touched her skin. When her hands came free, she winced. Adrian saw it. His jaw tightened. Victor stepped forward. "Adrian, this is a misunderstanding." Adrian stood. The air changed with him. "You kidnapped a woman on my ground." Victor laughed nervously. "Your ground? This is my development." Adrian's eyes shifted to the stone. Sienna saw the moment again, the flicker, the recognition, the wound hidden behind discipline. "Not anymore," Adrian said. Victor's smile died. "You wouldn't." Adrian looked at the half-built tower, then at Sienna, then back at Victor. "Watch me." By dawn, Calder Crown Tower fell. The demolition was controlled, surgical, impossible to explain. Permits appeared. Crews arrived. Police blocked streets without asking questions. News anchors called it a shocking emergency safety measure. Victor Calder called it criminal destruction. Social media called Adrian Moretti insane. Sienna watched the tower collapse from behind a barricade, wrapped in Adrian's coat, her hair wet, her hands still marked by rope. When the final section fell, dust rose into the Miami sunrise like a ghost leaving the city. Adrian stood beside her without touching her. "Why was my name on that stone?" she asked. He did not answer. She turned to him. "You know something." His eyes remained on the ruins. "Go home, Sienna." The way he said her name made her throat tighten. Not like a stranger. Not like a man who had just learned it. Like a man who had been careful not to say it for years. "I'm not one of your men," she said. "You don't get to give me orders." At that, he finally looked at her. For the first time, something almost like fascination moved through his cold expression. "No," he said. "You are much more dangerous than my men." Then he walked away. Sienna should have been relieved. Instead, she felt the beginning of a mystery opening beneath her feet. 2 days later, her life became a public scandal. Every channel played footage of the demolition. Her face appeared beside Adrian's. Headlines called her the engineer who triggered an $800 million collapse. Bloggers accused her of being Moretti's mistress. Victor Calder filed lawsuits. Anonymous accounts leaked her address. By the third night, news vans were outside her apartment. By the fourth, a bullet came through her kitchen window. Sienna dropped to the floor as glass exploded over the sink. Before she could crawl to her phone, her front door burst open. Adrian entered with 2 men behind him. Not panicked, furious in a way so quiet it terrified her. He found her under the counter, breathing hard, tiny cuts glittering on her arm. Their eyes locked. For 1 second, the feared Mafia Boss looked like a man who had just seen the world end. Then the mask returned. "You're coming with me." "No." Another shot cracked through the window. Adrian stepped between her and the glass without hesitation. "Sienna," Froze. He looked down at her. Argue in the car. He took her to a penthouse above Brickell, all black marble, floor-to-ceiling windows, rain-streaked city lights, and silence expensive enough to feel hostile. There were guards at the elevator, cameras in every hallway, a medical kit waiting on the kitchen island. Sienna stood barefoot on heated stone, while Adrian cleaned the cuts on her arm with hands steadier than any surgeon's. "You do this often?" she asked. "Clean blood off women I barely know. Kidnap whistleblowers into luxury prisons." His mouth almost moved. Not a smile. The memory of one. "You were already kidnapped once this week. I'm improving the pattern. I want the truth. You want many things that are bad for your survival. And you want control." His eyes lifted to hers. The penthouse was silent except for rain tapping the glass. "Yes," he said. The honesty should have angered her. It did. But beneath it was something else. An ache she did not want to name. "Why my name?" she asked. Adrian wrapped the bandage around her wrist with careful restraint. "That stone was placed 22 years ago. Sienna Vale. I'm 28. I know." Her pulse thudded. "Why do you know that?" He stepped back. Too fast. Like closeness had become a mistake. "Sleep. My men will take the guest rooms. You'll be safe here." "Safe from who?" His eyes darkened. "Everyone who thinks destroying that tower exposed only cheap concrete." That night, Sienna did not sleep. She wandered the penthouse until she found a locked study. The lock was expensive, but she was an engineer. By sunrise, she had it open. Inside, she found no weapons, no drugs, no stacks of cash. She found files, old files, newspaper clippings about her mother, a photograph of Sienna Vale standing in front of an empty construction lot 22 years ago, holding a little girl with dark curls. Sienna. On the back, in handwriting she recognized from old birthday cards, her mother had written, "For Sienna." So she will always have ground no one can steal. Sienna's knees weakened. Behind her, Adrian spoke. "You should not be in here." She turned, holding the photograph. "You knew my mother." Adrian's face closed. "Yes." "How?" He said nothing. "How?" she demanded, voice breaking. He entered the room slowly, like approaching a wild animal. "Elena saved my life once." Sienna laughed once, disbelieving and hurt. "My mother cleaned hotel rooms." "She did much more than that." Adrian looked at the photo. "She found me bleeding behind a service entrance when I was 23. I was not yet the man people fear now. I was reckless, hunted, half dead. She hid me in a laundry room and lied to men who would have killed her for it." Sienna's fingers tightened around the photograph. "My mother never told me. She wanted you away from my world. Then, why was my name in the foundation?" Adrian's silence stretched. Sienna stepped closer. "Tell me." His eyes met hers. "That land belonged to your mother." The room tilted. "No. She inherited it from your grandfather. Small parcel, worthless then. When Miami changed, men wanted it. Your mother refused to sell unless a trust was created in your name." Sienna could barely breathe. "She said the land would be your future," Adrian continued. "Then she died. My mother died of a heart condition." Adrian's face hardened. "No, Sienna, she didn't." The words landed like a blade. For a moment, everything disappeared. The penthouse, the rain, the city below. "What did you say?" "She was killed because she refused to sign over the land." Sienna slapped him. The sound cracked through the study. His head turned slightly. The guards outside the door shifted, but Adrian raised one hand, stopping them. Sienna's eyes filled with tears. "You knew? All these years you knew?" "I suspected." "You suspected and did nothing?" His jaw tightened. "I was 23. I had no empire, no proof. By the time I had power, Every document was gone. But you watched me. His silence answered. Sienna backed away from him. The hidden surveillance. The strange warnings. The way danger had missed her by inches for years. It was you. Adrian's eyes did not deny it. The anonymous scholarship. The apartment security. The job offer that appeared after graduate school. The man across the street. I kept distance. You stalked me. I kept you alive. You don't get to make that sound noble. Pain flashed across his face so quickly she almost missed it. Then, he became cold again. No, he said. I don't. Sienna left the penthouse that afternoon. Or tried to. The elevator opened to 3 armed guards. Adrian stood behind her, voice controlled. You cannot go back to your apartment. I'm not staying with a man who built a cage and called it protection. His gaze dropped to her suitcase, then back to her face. You may hate me alive. That's not love. I never said it was. The words hung between them. Too honest. Too dangerous. For the next week, Sienna lived under Moretti protection and hated every second of needing it. Adrian gave her space but never distance. His men followed her to legal meetings. His cars waited outside city offices. His name opened doors and closed threats. He never touched her unless necessary, but somehow his restraint felt more intimate than contact. At night, she caught him watching Miami from the balcony, phone in hand, issuing quiet orders that moved police chiefs, judges, bankers, and killers like pieces on a chessboard. He was dismantling Victor Calder's life. Not quickly, completely. Sienna should have felt satisfaction. Instead, she felt trapped between grief and desire, between the truth about her mother and the man who had carried that truth like a weapon for years. One evening, after a tense hearing where Victor's lawyers accused Sienna of fabricating evidence, Adrian found her alone in the courthouse stairwell. She was shaking, not from fear, but rage. They made her sound greedy. Sienna whispered. My mother worked double shifts, so I could take physics tutoring. She wore the same coat for 6 winters, and they called her greedy. Adrian stood 1 step below her. For once, he looked up at her. Elena was braver than most men I have buried. Sienna swallowed hard. You cared about her. Yes. Did you love her? Adrian's eyes softened with old respect, not romance. She was the first person who saw me bleeding and did not ask what I had done to deserve it. Sienna looked away, tears threatening. Adrian lifted his hand. For a moment, she thought he would touch her face. He stopped inches away. His fingers curled into his palm. I am trying very hard, he said quietly, not to become another man who takes from you. Sienna's heart ached. Then tell me everything. So he did. Not all at once. Men like Adrian Moretti did not confess easily, but that night, in the back of a bulletproof car, moving through neon rain, he told her about the Moretti family war, about Victor Calder's father laundering money through waterfront properties, about Elena Vale refusing to sign false documents, about a hidden deed, a trust, and a foundation stone placed before anyone understood how valuable the land would become. The stone was a legal marker, Adrian said. Your mother's final protection. If the tower stood, Calder could claim history favored him. If the stone was exposed, the ownership trail could reopen. Sienna stared at him. So when you demolished it, I exposed the stone to the world and destroyed Victor's claim. Yes. She turned toward the window. Rain blurred Miami into gold and black streaks. You didn't destroy the tower only because of me. Adrian's reflection looked at her from the glass. No, he said. I destroyed it because your mother built her last act of love into the ground, and Victor Calder buried you on top of it. The ache in Sienna's chest broke open. She cried then, quietly. Adrian did not touch her, but he sat beside her, in the dark, silent and unmoving, like a wall between her grief and the rest of the world. The attack came 3 nights later. Sienna was at a private archive downtown, reviewing sealed property records with a retired clerk who had known her mother. Adrian had reluctantly allowed it after surrounding the building with guards. But Victor Calder had friends inside systems Adrian did not own. The power went out. The emergency lights flashed red. Then gunfire shattered the hallway. Adrian reached Sienna before she fully understood what was happening. 1 second, she was holding old property documents. The next, she was against his chest behind a marble column, his body covering hers as bullets tore through glass display cases. "Stay down," he said. His voice was calm, too calm. Sienna smelled gunpowder and rainwater on his coat. Men shouted in the dark. Adrian fired back with brutal precision, but the violence around them felt distant compared to the terrifying intimacy of his hand at the back of her head, keeping her shielded. A bullet struck the column near her face. She flinched. Adrian's eyes changed. The cold man vanished. Something ancient and possessive rose in him. He looked at the attackers not like enemies, like men who had touched something sacred. By the time his guards stormed in, 3 attackers were down. 2 had fled, and Adrian's white shirt was stained red near his ribs. Sienna saw it and forgot to be afraid of him. "You're hit. It's nothing. Adrian." His name from her mouth stopped him. For 1 dangerous second, the whole world narrowed. Then he swayed. Sienna caught him as much as she could. At the private hospital, he refused anesthesia until he knew she had been checked. He sat on the edge of the bed, shirt open, blood cleaned from his skin, while a doctor stitched him. Sienna stood by the window, arms wrapped around herself. "You could have died," she said. Adrian looked at her. "So could you. You say that like it's different." "It is." Her eyes filled again, this time with anger and fear. "Not to me." The doctor quietly left. Adrian watched her. "You should not say things you do not mean." "I mean it." "No," he said, voice low. "You are grateful, traumatized, confused." Sienna crossed the room. "I know the difference between confusion and caring." His jaw tightened. "Do not care for me." "Why?" "Because I ruin what I protect." She stopped in front of him. "You protected me before you ever let me know you existed. That was safer." "For who?" He looked away. For the first time, Sienna saw it clearly. The fear beneath the control. Not fear of bullets. Not fear of rivals. Fear of needing her. She touched the edge of the bandage near his ribs. He went still, every muscle locked. Her hand was gentle, but his reaction was violent restraint. "Sienna," he warned softly. "What?" "If you touch me like that, I will forget every honorable thought I have left." Her breath caught. They stared at each other, close enough for the moment to become irreversible. Then his phone rang. Adrian closed his eyes once, as if dragged back from a cliff. He answered. His expression turned lethal. When he ended the call, Sienna already knew. "What happened? Victor has your mother's original deed." "How?" "He found the witness." "What witness?" Adrian stood slowly, despite the wound. "The child." Sienna blinked. "What child?" Adrian's face was unreadable. Then he said the words that changed everything. "Your mother was not alone the night she died. There was a boy with her." Sienna stared. "The boy disappeared into witness protection. He saw Victor's father give the order." "Who is he?" Adrian hesitated. That hesitation cut deeper than any answer. "Tell me." "He is my son." The world stopped. Sienna stepped back. "You have a son." "Yes, and you hid that too. To keep him alive." "How old?" 8. Her mind raced, shattered pieces rearranging. Adrian had a child. A secret child. A witness tied to her mother's murder. A boy hidden from the world, because Victor Calder would kill him to bury the past. "Where is he?" "In a safe house in the Keys." "And Victor knows." "He knows enough." Sienna looked at Adrian's wound, his pale face. the quiet panic he was fighting to suppress. For the first time, she saw him not as a king, as a father. Then we go get him. No. Yes. Sienna, this is not your war. She stepped close. My mother died in this war. My name was buried in its foundation. Don't you dare tell me it isn't mine. Adrian looked at her for a long moment. Then something like pride darkened his eyes. Get your coat. The drive to the quays was a fever dream of rain, black SUVs, and coastal darkness. Adrian sat beside her in the back seat, one hand pressed discreetly against his wound, phone glowing with encrypted messages. Sienna watched the road vanish beneath them, and wondered how her life had become a series of locked doors opening onto deeper danger. Near midnight, they reached the safe house. It was too quiet. Adrian knew before anyone said it. He stepped from the SUV and raised one hand. His men spread out. Sienna's heart pounded. Then, a small boy appeared at an upstairs window. Dark hair, serious eyes. Alive. Adrian exhaled for the first time in hours. The boy ran down the stairs and into the doorway. Dad. Adrian crossed the yard with no softness in his face. But when he knelt and pulled the boy into his arms, Sienna looked away because the tenderness felt too private to witness. His name was Luca. He was 8 years old, guarded, intelligent, and holding a small silver toy car like a lifeline. He looked at Sienna with suspicion. You're the engineer. Sienna smiled gently. I am. You made Dad blow up a building. Adrian's mouth tightened. Luca. Sienna almost laughed, but the boy's eyes were too serious. I didn't make him, she said. Your dad seems difficult to make do anything. Luca studied her. Then, solemnly, he nodded. That's true. For 2 fragile hours, they almost felt safe. Luca showed Sienna a box of seashells. Adrian watched from the doorway, arms crossed, pretending not to care that his son was speaking more to her than he had to most adults. Something in his gaze warmed when Sienna listened carefully to Luca, explaining which shells sounded most like storms. Then Luca said, My mom said your mom was brave. Sienna froze. Adrian's eyes sharpened. You knew my mother? Luca nodded. Not me. My mom did. Before she died. Sienna looked at Adrian. Another hidden grief. Another sealed room. Adrian's voice was quiet. Luca's mother was the witness protection officer assigned to the case. She died protecting him. Sienna's anger softened into something more complicated. This man had not just hidden secrets. He had buried losses. Suddenly, headlights swept across the windows. Too many. Adrian moved instantly. Basement. Now, the safe house erupted into chaos. Rival Calder gunmen stormed through the mangroves. Glass shattered. Alarms screamed. Adrian's men returned fire. Sienna grabbed Luca's hand and ran. Adrian behind them, shielding both with his body. In the basement, they found the emergency tunnel blocked. A betrayal. Someone inside Adrian's network had sold the safe house. Luca began to shake. Sienna crouched in front of him. Look at me. Not the door. Me. His tearful eyes locked on hers. You're going to breathe with me, okay? Above them, footsteps thundered. Adrian listened, gun in hand, blood darkening his bandage. He looked at Sienna. In that look was everything he would never say in front of his son. Fear, apology, devotion. Then he handed her a small key. What is this? If I fall, take Luca to the boathouse. There's a second car. No. Sienna, no. You don't get to hand me your child like a goodbye. His eyes burned. I am handing you the only part of me worth saving. The door above splintered. Sienna grabbed his wrist. Then survive. For a moment, he looked down at her hand on him. Then his expression changed. Not soft, decided. Adrian Moretti went up the stairs like death in a black coat. What followed became a story whispered across Miami before morning. The Calder men expected a wounded Mafia boss desperate to protect a secret child. They found a father with nothing left to negotiate. Adrian's loyal captain, Nico, arrived with reinforcements from the marina. The traitor in Adrian's network was exposed a long-time advisor named Dario, who had sold Luca's location in exchange for control of Moretti shipping routes. Dario Begel. Adrian did not raise his voice. You sold my son. Dario looked toward Sienna. She made you weak. Adrian's eyes cut to him. No, he said. She reminded me why power exists. By dawn, Luca was safe. Dario vanished into the justice of men who did not need courtrooms. Victor Calder, however, escaped, and he took with him the final deed. The last act began at the ruins of Calder Crown Tower. Victor announced a press conference, claiming he would expose Adrian Moretti as a criminal saboteur and Sienna Vale as his lover, liar, and paid accomplice. Every major Miami outlet came. Helicopters circled again. Police watched from barricades. Protesters shouted. Cameras waited for scandal. Sienna arrived not in hiding, but beside Adrian. She wore a simple black dress and no jewelry. Her hair moved in the ocean wind. Adrian stood at her side in a dark suit, pale from his injury but terrifyingly composed. You don't have to do this, he said. Sienna looked at the ruins. Yes, I do. Victor Calder walked onto the temporary stage with a smile. He held up a folder. This woman destroyed a landmark project with fraudulent claims. She colluded with organized crime. And today, I will prove Calder Crown Tower was legally mine. Sienna stepped forward. Reporters shouted her name. Adrian's hand hovered near her back but did not touch. She felt it anyway. Victor opened the folder, then stopped. His face changed. The pages inside were blank. Across the site, Nico smiled faintly. Adrian leaned closer to Sienna and murmured, You said buildings remember everything. Sienna looked at him. He nodded toward the exposed foundation pit. Workers began removing a protective tarp. Beneath it was the stone, her name, and under the stone, sealed in waterproof casing, was Elena Vale's original deed, trust documents, photographs, and a recorded statement naming the men who threatened her. The press exploded. Victor lunged forward, panic tearing away his polished mask. That's mine. Sienna faced him. No, she said, voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. It was my mother's. Victor's eyes turned wild. He pulled a gun. The world screamed. Adrian moved before anyone else. He stepped in front of Sienna, took her behind him, and fired once. Victor fell before he could pull the trigger. For one suspended second, the whole city seemed silent. Then chaos returned, police rushing, cameras flashing, reporters screaming, Luca crying from inside a protected SUV where he had insisted on watching from a distance. Sienna clutched Adrian's arm. You're bleeding again. He looked down as if surprised by his own body. Then he looked at her. I told you, he said quietly. I ruin what I protect. Sienna stepped in front of him, uncaring of cameras, blood, scandal, or fear. No, she whispered. You destroy what tries to bury it. His eyes searched hers. For once, Adrian Moretti had no answer. 3 months later, the land where Calder Crown Tower once stood was no longer a crime scene. It was empty, open. Wind moved across it from the bay. The lawsuits were still unfolding. Calder's empire had collapsed. City officials resigned. Inspectors were arrested. Elena Vale's name became the center of a public reckoning Miami could not ignore. Sienna inherited the land. She refused every developer who tried to buy it. Instead, she announced the Elena Vale Foundation for Safe Housing and Engineering Ethics, a public institute built to train young engineers, protect whistleblowers, and investigate dangerous construction practices before greed could become disaster. The first stone was laid at sunset. Not hidden this time. Not buried beneath a lie. Sienna stood before cameras, her voice steady as she spoke of her mother, of truth, of buildings that should protect people instead of endangering them. Adrian watched from the back of the crowd with Luca beside him. He did not stand near her. He had learned, slowly and painfully, that protection was not possession. But when the ceremony ended and the crowd thinned, Sienna found him by the water. "You're leaving?" she asked. Adrian looked out at the bay. "I thought I should give you a life without my shadow." She studied him, the feared man, the wounded father, the king who had burned an empire because her name was buried beneath it. "And if I choose the shadow?" His jaw tightened. "Sienna, no. You don't get to decide what I can survive." He turned to her then. The sunset caught in his dark eyes. "I am not an easy man to love." "I didn't say easy." His breath changed. She stepped closer. "You once told me you kept distance because it was safer." "Yes, was it?" A long silence passed between them. Then Adrian reached for her slowly, giving her every chance to step away. She didn't. His hand touched her cheek with devastating gentleness. "I have been afraid of many things in my life," he said. "Death, betrayal, losing my son, becoming my father." His thumb brushed away a tear she had not noticed falling. "But nothing has frightened me like wanting to come home to you." Sienna closed her eyes. When he kissed her, it was not soft at first. It was restrained hunger breaking through years of denial, grief, fear, and distance. It was rain on concrete, dust after demolition, blood on white shirts, her mother's name restored, his son alive, and a city watching a monster learn devotion. Then it softened, because Sienna softened it. Luca's voice came from behind them. "Does this mean she's staying?" Adrian pulled back, eyes still on Sienna. "That depends on her." Sienna looked at Luca, then at Adrian. "I'm not staying in a cage." Adrian's mouth curved slightly. "No cage, no surveillance without permission." A pause. "Limited surveillance?" "Adrian, no surveillance," he corrected, "and no destroying buildings unless structurally necessary." This time, he almost smiled. "I make no promises about ugly architecture." Sienna laughed through her tears, and the sound changed something in him. It reached a place power never had. Months later, on the cleared waterfront, construction began again. Not a tower. A low, luminous building of glass, stone, gardens, classrooms, and open public terraces facing the ocean. At the entrance, beside the first foundation stone, 2 names were carved: Sienna Vale, Sienna Vale, and beneath them, smaller, almost hidden unless the light touched it just right, were 4 words Adrian had asked permission to add: "Ground no one can steal." On opening night, Miami glowed behind them. Sienna stood on the terrace in a deep blue dress, watching students, engineers, families, and survivors fill the building with life. Adrian came up beside her in a black suit. Luca ran ahead with a group of children, laughing for once without looking over his shoulder. Sienna leaned lightly against Adrian's arm. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "The tower? The money? The war? The scandal?" Adrian looked at the city, then at her. "I regret. Every day I watched you from a distance and called it protection." Her heart tightened, and now his hand found hers, warm, steady, open. "Now I stand beside you." Below them, waves struck the seawall. Above them, the sky darkened into velvet, and for the first time in years, Sienna felt the ground beneath her not as a warning, but as a promise. Adrian Moretti, the man Miami feared, kissed her hand in front of everyone, not to claim her, to honor her, and when she looked at him, she no longer saw only danger. She saw the man who had torn down a monument to corruption because her name had been buried beneath it. The man who had mistaken obsession for protection. The man who had learned that love was not control, not distance, not fear. Love was standing in the ruins and choosing to build something honest. Together. As cameras flashed and the city whispered their names, Adrian leaned close and said the words only she could hear. "The next time the world tries to bury you, Sienna, I won't just destroy the tower." His eyes held hers, dark and devoted. "I'll burn down the sky." And this time, Sienna did not feel afraid. She smiled, touched his face, and whispered back, "Then I'll teach you how to rebuild it."